Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 28 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone. Chris, what's up?
Not much. How are you?
I'm good. Day after election day, so a lot of wildness going on right now in the world.
Yeah, it's wild.
But everything in the Amazon world is just going to keep on chugging along regardless. So excited about today's topic because I think just in terms of you and I talking to sellers on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of concern and confusion about ACoS in general and what's a good one and what should you be looking at, your ACoS or your total ACoS. So today we're going to just dive into the difference between ACoS and total ACoS, also known as TACoS, for your PPC campaigns. So yeah, this is gonna be fun to talk about, Chris.
Yeah, and we see this a lot with new sellers, especially coming on the platform. They're like, I want to get like a 10% ACoS. It's like, okay, well, either your product is not very good or you're not willing to spend more money to achieve more ranking. So it's this term is tricky because a lot of people brag about I have a really low ACoS, but you could be leaving sales on the table. So we're going to break that down on a few of these steps here for you.
For sure. And just to get started with what ACoS and TACoS actually means, ACoS stands for advertising cost of sales. So it is your ad spend divided by the revenue generated from those ads. So it's a metric that's shown inside your campaign manager in Seller Central. TACoS, you have to calculate yourself. Because Amazon does not report this, but that includes your organic sales. So it's your ad spend divided by your total sales, whether they were paid or organic. In reality, that's the only metric that matters. Your PPC ACoS is just sort of awareness of how much you're spending per to sale driven by your ads. But that's where people get confused and they get discouraged is you have to know what your goal is to know what a good ACoS is. If you want to have low ad spend, if that's your goal, then you need a low ACoS. But that could also mean no sales or low sales. But if you're wanting to rank or increase your sales, et cetera, then a high ACoS can actually be good. It can be what you're looking for. I think that's really difficult for a seller to wrap their head around.
Yeah, and to that point is some people or some sellers, you don't know what your break-even ACoS is. Like that's a super important metric you need to know is like what is your break-even ACoS for those campaigns, and you can figure that out just by simply saying what is your profit margin on that product that is in that campaign. So if you're selling a product and it gets 40%. You make 40% margins on that, your break-even ACoS for that campaign is 40%. So when you go inside Solozo and we ask you for your target ACoS, depending on where you're at in the product cycle, if you're trying to launch and rank and achieve more sales and really try to get your ranking up, you would want to set your target ACoS at your either break-even or a little bit higher than your break-even. If you're on page one already and you're kind of like in maintenance mode and you kind of want to bring back your ad spend a little bit, then that's where you could set your target ACoS a little bit below your profit margin. We see this all the time where sellers come in and they have a target ACoS and they're like, I want my target ACoS to be 10%. Well, their current campaign target ACoS or their current ACoS for their campaign is like 50. So when they come in here and they put like their target at 10 and their current ACoS is 50, it's the first thing the tool is going to do is just really lower the bids for everything. And then your sales are going to drop off. So you got to figure out where you're at in the selling cycle. Are you already on page one and just looking to kind of be in maintenance mode? Or are you trying to increase your ranking and get more sales and try to use advertising for that? Then you're kind of like in a launch mode and you need to be more aggressive when setting your target ACoS.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. And I think the trick is to know what stage you're in and what your goals are. Okay, and also to know what advertising is actually doing on Amazon. It's different than other platforms. It's different than a Facebook or Google Ads, etc. You can generate organic sales from ads because the more sales you drive, your product is moving up the rankings for those keywords, and now you're getting those organic sales, which is why when you calculate your organic revenue into your total ACoS, you're getting an indicator of the success of your ads. And so when people get scared, like you brought up about the ACoS, if that's all they care about, you may never expand your reach on the Amazon platform. You may just live in wherever you currently exist and not branch out. And you could be leaving a ton of money on the table. And so if you know that, if you say, I'm willing to spend money on ads, I'm willing to be unprofitable at first because I want to grow, I want to show up on all these different keywords, and then you start driving organic sales, now your revenue's increased, your ad spend may not be profitable yet, but you've now shown up all over the Amazon platform, and that's when you said you can go into more of a maintenance mode. But before going to maintenance mode, all you have to do is look at your total ACoS. Because if you've got a total ACoS that's well within your margins, you might have room to be more aggressive. I mean, there's lots of cases where you'll see a PPC ACoS, the ACoS that's in Campaign Manager, of maybe it's 60%, but your total ACoS is 10%. And if your margins are 40% on that product, maybe if you're more aggressive, maybe if you raise your total ACoS up to 70, 80%, you might double your sales and you're still profitable on everything. So I think the key to being a really successful seller on Amazon is to not get scared by the ACoS number. High ACoS can be your friend sometimes because it means that you're aggressively advertising and generating a lot of sales, and that it turns into organic sales.
And especially to your point, like the high ACoS, especially if you have a product that's like a repeat purchase or consumable, you don't want to limit yourself by setting your target ACoS too low, because you're not going to be able to reach all those other potential customers out there. So if you have a product that people buy over and over again, or they subscribe and save, you may want to shoot for like 15, 20% higher than your break-even ACoS, because you want to get all those sales in there, build up your subscriptions. And this can take like 6 to 12 months. This is not, maybe more on the 12-month side. This is not like a quick 2-month process. You may not be profitable on your ads for a while, but what you're doing is you're slowly increasing your organic ranking. You're getting more subscribers. And then over time, you're going to kind of bring back that ad spend because you're starting to get subscribers and your ranking is starting to increase. So it's a long-term play. And you and I both see it when we talk to sellers, depending on what their product is. And that's like the first thing we do is like, send us your product page, or let me see your product page. Depending on what the product is, their goal is going to be different for each seller. So it's all depends on the product too.
Yeah. But I think just like you talked about, there's a strategy to being successful on Amazon, and launching a product and being aggressive on advertising is a part of it to get you ranked. In fact, I was just talking to a seller there. It was interesting because they've got a good product, but they don't spend a lot of time on Amazon. So of course their images and everything are terrible. And I was telling them, I said, well, first thing you got to do, we got to make sure we clean up all these images. We got to make sure your listings are on point. I showed him his competitors, and it was perfect because he was in a space where his competitors were doing a terrible job also. So he could totally differentiate himself from all of his competitors with unreal pictures and really spruce up his listing. And he said, well, if I really went advertising, is like, what can you see? What do you see that doing? And he was doing like 10 sales a month or something real low right now. And I ran Helium 10 on his main keyword, and it was, the top, 10 sellers were doing $500,000 in revenue in the last 30 days. And I said, well, you could get a percentage of that, and you could, and they're not doing a very good job. So yes, are you willing to get your product up there and people see it next to those where you're going to shine, and then you could maybe rank organically? I mean, that's why you can take this strategy of being aggressive with your ACoS and then have it just totally pay off in the long term. you're going to optimize your campaigns. If you're using a tool like Solozo, at some point, you're going to get in maintenance mode. Our tool is going to optimize it. Your ad campaigns will be profitable long-term, so you can just keep them running, but you'll be in this space on Amazon where you're just generating so many more sales.
Mm-hmm. And you got to be ready for it, because it's not like just, a couple $100 a month kind of deal. You got to be ready to scale. And especially if you want to rank, you got to be able to put some money behind it.
Mm-hmm. And the more competitive the category, or the higher lifetime value of the customer, for example, like a consumable, like you were talking about, where there's repeat sellers, your competitors are bidding more aggressively on those. They're willing to lose. So depending on what category you're in, it's going to take a bigger chunk of initial advertising investment to rank. And that's where product selection, et cetera, comes into play. That's where sellers like you and I, our initial goal is to find voids in the marketplace where we can have an easier entry into that. But no matter where you are, you need to understand what it's going to take you to be successful on Amazon, and understand that that's not necessarily a negative, but if you have that ad budget and you can do it, it's what you need to do. Otherwise you're just never gonna to rank properly on Amazon. And that's a hard one. It's hard to sell that to somebody sometimes.
I know, because that goal, that whole ACoS, low ACoS term is so much thrown around and advertised as like, I got a low ACoS, that people think that's what they need to focus on. But they could, again, to our point earlier, they could be just leaving money on the table because they're not being aggressive enough with their advertising. And if you just do that for a period of time, your ranking is going to go up, you're going to get more sales, and it'll all just come back for you. And then again, we've talked about this numerous times, your listing. So this is, again, where you got to have a really good listing. If your listing is short title, 2 images, and no bullet points, you can run all the ads you want, but it ain't going to convert as well. So this, again, your listing is definitely something you want to focus on, because this is only going to help with your ads as far as performance goes.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point you brought up about the way this gets pitched. I mean, there's lots of tools out there. There's lots of agencies and assistants who pitch that they're going to manage your campaigns for you. And the hot sale is, hey, we're going to lower your ACoS and grow your sales. And those are two pretty conflicting things. Not necessarily possible. And advertising and tools like Solozo, they're misrepresented when that's what you think they're going to do. The tool is going to do whatever your strategy is. If you're looking to grow, a good automation tool, when you set high targets, is actually going to increase your ACoS on purpose. It's going to raise your bids. It's going to show you more. That's part of optimization, is getting it out there. Yes, if you want to rein in your ad spend, okay, and you're in a more mature part of your product lifecycle, yes, the tool is going to reduce bids on poor performing keywords to get you that. But a tool, it's just not super possible to lower your ACoS and grow sales. It's the other way around. You grow your sales by spending on ads, and then you lower your ACoS. And really what you're doing is you're lowering your total ACoS. It doesn't matter if you could actually raise your target ACoSs and your total ACoS can go down. That I would consider lowering your ACoS, because that's the actual ad spend per unit sold. So yeah, I think that's just critical when whether you are not selling yet on Amazon, and you're looking at what it's going to entail, or if you are currently selling on Amazon and you're frustrated on which way you're going to go. You're frustrated, maybe your advertising is too expensive and you don't see any daylight at the end, or you're just don't know what you should do. That's why this is an important topic. It's important to really monitor your total ACoS so you know the impact. If you're running ads and if your target ACoS is whatever at your margins, and your noticing over time that your total ACoS is decreasing while your sales are going up, that's positive. That means your ads are having the right impact, which means you can raise those targets if you want to and test out where that limit is. And so yeah, it's an interesting topic. It's tricky. It's not cut and dry. It's not low ACoS good, high ACoS bad. There's a whole lot of gray in there, and the ACoS metric is what you're using for your strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you touched on a little bit, but total ACoS, kind of hit on that again. What's the difference again between total ACoS and the ACoS? What are you looking at there?
Sure. Well, if you go into your campaign manager, you'll be able to see your ACoS. That's what in Celoza we call that your PPC ACoS, just to differentiate. And that's your ad spend divided by the revenue directly attributed to ads. So the revenue from people clicking on your ads and buying.
So that's ad spend divided by ad revenue.
Exactly. And so that's a good metric to know, but it's a misleading metric because with the way you calculate the total ACoS is you include all sales of that product, whether they're paid or organic. And so you take your your ad spend divided by your total revenue for that product. Gotcha. And so that's your total ACoS. And that is a true number. You can tell if your total ACoS is 10%, then your ad spend per unit sold is 10%. And that's important. So that's the metric. That's the metric that has to be long-term within your margins, or you won't be profitable. Your PPC ACoS long-term could be well above your margins, and you could be really profitable. You just have to know. That's another reason why a tool like Celoza is important, because you can quickly see that, and you can quickly track that over time. How is my total ACoS doing over time? Inside Amazon, they don't even report it. You don't have your total ACoS, which I'm kind of surprised by, because it would make campaigns look a lot more attractive if they reported it.
People would love that.
Yeah, it'd be in their interest to do that, but they don't. And so you need a tool to calculate that for you. And like you said at the beginning, you also really have to know your actual margins on your product. So when you're calculating your margins, make sure you're including everything: your cost of goods, all the FBA fees, inbound shipping, any other things that are happening with your product. That again is calculated inside Celoza, so you can see that really easily what all your fees are for the product. But those are important to know, and it's just really important to have a winning strategy when you're going with this, and just don't get caught up in high ACoS is bad. That's a lot of times that's the kiss of death for a lot of sellers, is they see that and they leave quickly. The other flip side of that is don't go into a competitive niche with $1,000 ad budget and think you're going to launch with that, because you're not. And so that's another kiss of death, is you don't spend enough, so you cut yourself off too early. You almost launched. You were so close. If you just would have kept going, you'd have been there. But you quit because it's unprofitable. So you just really have to do your research to know what it's going to take to launch, and then what long-term is going to be a good total ACoS for you.
Yeah, that's a good point, because some of the keywords you may target, they just are going to be super competitive. Tons of searches, tons of competitors. You may want to focus on like longer tail versions of that keyword, where the competition's kind of not as high. Maybe the cost per clicks are going to be a little bit lower, and maybe the ACoS is probably going to be a little bit lower. So you can kind of rank that way, because if you're selling, we always use dog brush, but if you go after dog brush, your ACoS is going to be extremely high. But if you go after dog brush for small dogs, and somebody buys your product through that search term, you're not only going to rank for that phrase, but dog brush is also going to get a little bit more of a boost too, because it's in that search term. So sometimes focusing on the longer tail keywords, you'll get a lower ACoS because the competition's focusing on those higher search terms.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's actually could be a topic for a whole nother podcast, is what launch strategy should you do for XYZ competition level and XYZ budget levels that you have? Because you're right, there are ways to launch with less money in competitive categories by focusing just on a few keywords, etc. But again, whichever way you go, knowing the difference between that ACoS and your TACoS and how you can use those numbers to gauge whether or not your advertising is working in the right direction that you want is so important. And hopefully this helped you guys out understand that. Your TACoS, much more important than ACoS. But ACoS is what you're setting your targets on. So you need to understand what it represents and why high can be good. I launch products, 200% ACoS, target ACoS when I launch a product.
Yeah, you got to change your mindset. Like I'm with you here, because we'll do demos with people and they're like, what should my target ACoS be? I'm like, well, are you on page 1 or what's your goal? I want to rank more. I want to increase my sales. All right, let's go to 200% target ACoS. And they're like, whoa, that is crazy high. It's like, well, yeah, we're trying to launch this thing, get you a bunch of clicks, get you a bunch of conversions, get a lot of traffic to the listing so that you can rank more on your keywords. So you got to kind of change your mindset a little bit. It's like, where do you what's your goal? And then, if you want to be profitable, you can go lower than your target or your profit margin. If you want to scale up, I would go higher than your profit margin when setting that target ACoS.
Exactly. Great points again. I think we've covered this pretty thoroughly here. Yeah. And just make sure, if you would like to understand this data better or have a tool calculate that for you, reach out to Chris and I. Go to Celozo.com and book a demo with us. We'll walk you through how Celozo reports this. We will look at your listing with you. We'll look at your product. We'll look at your campaigns. We'll help you construct a strategy. We'll talk about your budgets. We'll get you going in the right direction of launching a product or putting it in maintenance mode, whatever stage you're in. We love doing that. We'll love talking to you. So reach out to us. Chris and I will give you a 14-day free trial on the platform so you can really play around with those numbers and see the impact over that 14 days potentially of what happens with that total ACoS. Is it going down? That's good. We'll walk you through all that. So please go to Celozo.com, book a demo with us, and we'll be talking about your campaigns right away. We'd be excited to do that. Also, like this podcast and subscribe to this podcast. If you're watching us on Facebook, like Celozo, like the Celozo page. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're putting out content like this all day. Hopefully this is helpful to you guys. And we'd love to see you in a demo soon. Chris?
Yeah, we'd love to have some people come on and ask some questions too. So if you do Facebook Live, come on and ask a question. We'll definitely help out.
Absolutely. Again, we'll see you guys on the next episode. We'll be back tomorrow. Chris, have a great day.
See ya.
See ya.